Well, we dropped 15K on paid ads actually, and it was a big fat goose egg. We got zero leads out of that effort. So I kind of like learned the lesson that I'm pretty bad at paid ads. We also did some SEO work. We were not able to make that successful for us, etc. And so I became pretty obsessed with getting ChatGPT to recommend Sembit. I knew about it from our AI work, but really got pragmatic and started to just directly apply it to kind of moving the needle and getting ChatGPT and then later Gemini and AI mode and things like that to when certain prompts were prompted, that Sembit was the answer.
Hi, I'm Clark Newby, and welcome back to tomorrow's Best Practices Today. And today we've got a topic that's going to touch everything, I think, across your B2B marketing strategy and operations and performance, how you even measure yourself. Today we're going to be talking about AI search, AI engine optimization, whatever you want to call it, whatever label is current by the time this comes out. And to help us in this conversation, to teach us, is a perfect person to do this. Shaun Davidson is vice president at Sembit Corp. They're a software development consultancy up in Portland, Oregon. But early in 2025, he co-founded Zero Channel. And what Zero Channel does is basically AI search optimization, helps their clients make sure that they're getting recommended by large language models behind the AI search. We had Shaun on for a conversation, a LinkedIn live with with Leadtail in December of 2025. And so we wanted to have him back on the podcast to dig in even deeper with us. So, Shaun, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Clark.
Now you've got what I like about the conversation that we had late last year and how you described your path to search engine optimization was this was not an intellectual exercise for you. This wasn't sort of an academic noting that things are changing in the way people are searching. You have a real pragmatic path that you've taken to Zero Channel. So I'd love for you to share that story and what led you to create the whole new organization.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so Sembit is a company. We're based in Portland, Oregon, and most of our revenue on any given year comes from follow-on projects with existing clients. And we tried, dipping our toes in various forms of digital marketing. For example, in one humorous story, we dropped 15K on SEO. I think that was in 2023, and well, we dropped 15K on paid ads actually, and it was a big fat goose egg. We got zero leads out of that effort. So I kind of like learned the lesson that I'm pretty bad at paid ads. We also did some SEO work. We were not able to make that successful for us, etc. Probably should have hired a consultant, but we were trying to do it ourselves. So early 2025, we were doing quite a bit of work in various AI adjacent spaces for some pretty big players, working on a public facing SDK for a vector database on contract. We were using AI in our work. We were doing some internal skunkworks projects, training our own models, etc. And so I became pretty obsessed with getting ChatGPT to recommend Sembit, and everything kind of fell out of that. Just reverse engineering, trying to understand how the models recommend things, how context works, all that. I knew about it from our AI work, but really got pragmatic and started to just directly apply it to kind of moving the needle and getting ChatGPT and then later Gemini and AI mode and things like that to when certain prompts were prompted, that Sembit was the answer.
Right. And what's making this um, this is a non-recreational activity for marketers now. It's astounding how quickly. I mean, the majority of search, I think, is perhaps still is happening still through classic means, but it's amazing how rapidly people are giving themselves over to doing a search, just asking the AI, just asking ChatGPT or Gemini, um, who's good in this space? Who should I be talking to? And kind of going even farther in the selection and maybe even purchase process. Um, so you've seen that. So at zero channel, though, you guys really have your finger on the pulse of what's going on. Where would you say we are in that transition?
So right now, I mean, there's a variety of numbers out there that you can look at. I think I think like, we're approaching between 30 and 40% of people are starting their searches in some form of chat interface. So, for me, early on, I just always Googled things and then I would confirm things in ChatGPT. And then somewhere along the way, Control T, new tab, and Chrome for me opens up ChatGPT now. It doesn't really open up Google
Mhm.
anymore. And so that happened for me like early last year, where I would start in some kind of chat interface, and I use Gemini, I use Claude, I use ChatGPT, and I slowly over the course of months will switch between them. But basically, I think that latest data says about 37% of people in the U.S. are starting their searches in ChatGPT or Google AI mode, etc.
We want to make sure my board is yelling at me about AI search. And I got three emails last week from my CEO or a board member who's like, I ran this chat GPT search and they said the competitor is best. What are you doing over there? Right.
Right.
Um, there's finding the tools and understanding the platform, but there's the work to create the content that's going to be found, and then there's the work in the tech stack to be able to track it and to be able to make everything work together. Do you find like all three of those legs are legs that I'm not thinking of, or critical path items, or how do you
Yeah, I
guys
mean,
find a client and what kind of path do you start to put them?
there's a variety of problems with trying to do this. The first problem is that nobody really knows what people are prompting for. All of the larger companies, that's very sensitive data. They keep it all completely private. OpenAI doesn't have the equivalent of a Google Search Console, so you can't see what prompt volume is out there. So you have to do some guessing. You can reverse engineer some of that. Some people will purchase some, frankly, dubious prompt data and then attempt to reverse engineer it from kind of a sampled set across the internet. Chrome plugins will scrape this data, etc. But the reality is that it's very hard to get reliable prompt data, and it's basically impossible unless you're OpenAI. So you have to take some guesses, some educated guesses about what those prompts might be. The second thing is that at the very end of the stack, at the very end of the journey here, it's very hard to do attribution because you don't have a way to say, well, what the first time I saw this was a customer came to me and they just typed in Sembit to Google search, came to my site, filled in my contact form, didn't read much about me, etc. And I realized like something was up because Sembit is not a household name, right? And so I asked him like, how did you decide to work with us? And he said, oh, I had a half an hour conversation with ChatGPT and I decided to work with Sembit. It was cool. It was the best. And something clicked for me where I was like, what do you mean? You trusted ChatGPT? And that was very interesting to me. And so I kept digging into that, right? To where I realized that, I had to do manual attribution, and I sell, a few projects every year. They're pretty high value. And I get people on calls and I have the opportunity to ask them, how'd you hear about us, etc. But that is just a problem, right? Where there's no clear attribution. And then also there's this thing where it's a semi-stochastic model. So your boss comes to you and they say, I asked ChatGPT about us and our competitor, or I asked ChatGPT a question and our competitor was the first mention and we weren't mentioned at all. What gives? And you're like, well, did you ask it 20 times? And the reality though is that you are after somewhat deterministic results. Like I wanted to go to ChatGPT and type in a prompt like, who are the best, web developers in Portland, Oregon? And I wanted to say Sembit pretty much the first every time. right now I'm very focused on Google AI mode because Google, Gemini 3 plus AI mode are just hockey sticking up right now. Like they're very much, that's kind of, if you want to skate to where the ball is going, probably AI mode and Gemini are pretty safe bets. ChatGPT is gigantic as well, crossing over, 900 million weekly active users,
Hmm.
which is incredible. But basically, I wanted to be able to go to AI mode and, type that prompt in and have Sembit be the first mention.
Sure. Yeah.
And so, to do that, really what you're talking about there is, really the heart of search optimization as we're able to do it today. We can't know what the prompt volume is, so we can't go where people are prompting, which would be a traditional thing to do in SEO. And we
Hmm.
don't really, it's hard for us to do attribution. It is possible, but pretty manual. So really what we're looking to do is figure out where we can inject ourselves into that citation space, like to show up where ChatGPT or Google AI mode or Gemini or Claude, like to flip it around and say, where do I need to be in order for you to recommend me? And so that's where Zero Channel started was, we began to do wide scale, scraping and analyzing of these models.
Yeah, I think that idea of the citation space is incredibly important. In part because it's the only, well, I was going to say it's the only knowable part. It's not capital K knowable, I guess, but it's the most knowable part of if you can figure out where the conversation is happening. Because AEO, AI engine optimization, is it has a lot of the attributes of SEO, right? It's like SEO plus, right? SEO plus citations. So maybe what's going on at Reddit, or social proof, adding all these things together. And it feels to me like getting to people isn't as much the problem anymore. It's that, because there's so much noise, there's so many signals. But the hard part is figuring out how to say something that rates you high as a citation for the LLMs. Fair?
In your earned media plays, you're not as in control of what people say about you. And so one of the things that happens there is that, sometimes we'll try to steer what those reviews, if you will, are about. A good example would be if you're a doctor in San Jose and you offer ADHD services, for example, one of the things you could do is you could talk to some of your patients that have received ADHD services and be like, oh, please leave us a Yelp review. And if you can, mention ADHD, and that will put you. Yelp will then pull that keyword out, and you'll show up. You'll start to show up in that ADHD page that language models are looking at, right? And so but it's pretty hard to exactly control. You can't control what earned media says about you. And with owned media, or on-site media, things that you put out yourself, you can more quickly pivot, right? Because what's happening there is you're putting that message out there. And so one of the things we see is that part of that message is sort of training your own junior salesperson to speak about your company. And you can very quickly change anything that you control. And what's interesting about that, for Sembit, my company, it's not just our website and what we put on our website. It's also things like our Clutch profile. Clutch is a big, it's a large site in our industry that helps people find custom software, WordPress developers, whatever,
Yeah.
digital marketing firms. And so you get to write what's in your profile. So if you see a language model hitting your Clutch profile, then all of a sudden you can tweak the messaging that's there, and you can do it fast because it's going out in real time. And it's actually, there's a user agent that you can watch in your logs, and you can see
Mm.
ChatGPT-user agentically hitting your website or your Clutch profile or whatever, and then reading what's there and then kind of regurgitating it, right? And for a while, there was that silly hack where you could put stuff into your footer on your website. And if it read multiple pages of your website, it would show up multiple times in the footer. And anything you put in your footer, it would show up on ChatGPT.
Right,
Don't do
right.
it. It doesn't work anymore. But that was.
You do it feels to me very much like the early search engine marketing days, where it's like, well, it just makes sense. keywords. So what are our keywords? Where should we put them? We should have more of them. We wrote all this terrible, crappy copy that had the keywords overloaded in it, all that stuff, because that's what we could figure out was going to make a difference. But we can't see what searches are happening, to your point. Um, and the prompts. So you guys are figuring out predictive ways to, I think, be able to really understand what you think is going to happen and how we can optimize. Because without having some sort of prediction of what's optimal, it's hard to optimize. So tell us about that work.
Yeah, so this is where I get really excited because there's a reason why I care a lot about predictive modeling. And that's because if you're going to invest 5 hours of time, this week on implementing some form of AI search optimization, whether that's, getting a few reviews or building a new post that is likely to be picked up by ChatGPT, etc. By the way, side note, my record for becoming the top citation in ChatGPT and Google AI mode is 4 days. For a given
Wow.
cluster of prompts, we became the top citation in 4 days. But if you are going to do that work, then how much will that improve your visibility in terms of mentions? That's the big thing. So if you have X number of hours to invest and it's going to take you X amount of time to do it, where can you best invest those hours? And to do that, you really need to know, like, if I do this, this is what will happen somewhat predictively. And so we built a predictive model based on tens of thousands of samples. And it's a complex topic, which I won't dive into all the details here. But basically, it allows us to construct these they're not mathematically perfect, but they're the closest thing we can get to a very good a playbook that will take you through all the tasks you need to do in the right order. And so what we see is, it's not a one and done thing. You don't just do 20 tasks in a playbook and it just kind of statically works, right? There's a bunch of things that are drifting over time, right? So you want to do three or four, you want to invest a certain amount of time box limited time. You want to do 3 or 4 things over the course of 1 or 2 weeks, right? And then you want to run an after pass and you want to compare the before and after. And then you want to say, starting from this point in time, how well did I do? Like, did it move the needle as it was predicted to move the needle for this series of prompts? And then B, starting from this point, maybe the model has been checkpointed and they've released a new model silently. And, GPT 5.2 is not always the same model over time, right? They'll do very small revisions of post-trained versions of that model. And so the model might drift, citations might drift. We're seeing some
Mm.
interesting things where it's clear that some of our competitors have figured out how to do this as well, because they'll go from invisible to all of a sudden the number 2 mention for a prompt I'm doing. That happened to me
Yeah.
2 weeks ago, and I was like pretty enthused to see that got some competition.
Yeah.
And so, but you really have to continue to course correct in order to climb your way up the ranks and also stay there. And that's part of what predictive models give you, is the way to best invest your limited resource of time in order to focus on just the things that move the needle, I guess.
Right. And something just occurred to me too, just as you were talking about the uh, kind of decisions that you make with your clients, the way you advise them. But also earlier we were talking about citations being the currency here, earned earned media, owned media, kind of flashbacks to some of what you think of as in the older days, PR or comms. Who do you guys engage with typically? Who are you working with in a marketing organization? Are you working sort of on the comm side? Are you working on the ops side? Where is this getting chewed on today in the clients that you work with? Because I would imagine, because they strike me as the folks that are ahead and thinking about how to solve this problem first.
Well, we're doing it for very large companies and very small companies, so it really depends. But you
That's
know,
good. We got all types. We bring all types here, so it'd be great for folks to hear.
yeah, I mean, it definitely so. definitely digital marketing teams of all shapes and sizes, right? So we're doing this for agencies, clients, right? So we'll give the agency the playbook and then they'll implement the playbook on behalf of the client. Obviously, I can tell you what to do, but somebody has to go do that. And for some brands, that's going to be go get 20 clutch reviews or whatever it's going to be. For some brands, that's going to be get a case study with Microsoft. For some brands, that's going to be do some digital PR, like do a press release and here's where you need to appear. You need to appear in the Wirecutter. Like, good luck with that, but that's what they need to do, right? And that's all doable. Like, I'm talking to some digital PR companies right now for Sembit. And certainly we've worked with some SEO people where you need to create content for your website and it needs to look like this and have this title and this URL and needs to target, talking about these topics, etc. Right. And so it depends on the group, but in general, I would say the common thread is that someone is interested in this internally, like a chief marketing officer, or they've been given the mandate that they need to dig into this and someone has put them in touch with us. Anybody can do it because at the end of the day, what you get out of this process is you get a playbook of things that you just kind of work through in a pretty linear fashion. And it really crosses a wide variety. We're interested in digital PR. We're interested in SEO. We're interested in earned media. Sometimes we're interested in LinkedIn, et cetera, et cetera. And so it really, I usually will talk to them, show them their playbook, and then they'll kind of assemble their team internally.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. Thank you for kind of putting a button on that. Clearly, this is a tectonic shift for marketers. There are going to be uh, it, things are not going to be the same after this development. There are going to be people that get it and win, and those that get left behind. In the clients that you're working with, or in the conversations you're having with folks, what separates the men from the boys here? What's separating the companies that are going to win and get on board this? Because it's going to be very time critical. We're kind of behind already, probably on it. What attributes would you like to see in a client or like to see in a marketing organization, or maybe the folks that are in that organization, the sort of things they would be hoping to hear from their leadership around AI search and making sure they're in the win column, not the lose column?
It's a good question. So I do have some opinions about this, having talked to a lot of people about it.
Right.
I've had hundreds of conversations with different companies about this. And so I think the biggest thing is you really have to it is a very new thing. It rests on the pillars of SEO, but it's totally different, right? Like context and context engineering and caring about these pipelines and RAG and all what do those terms mean? How do they work? What is subdocument processing and how does that relate to chunking and RAG and all that? Like these are just, you don't necessarily have to understand all of that, but eventually you're going to brush up against those things. And so what I see is that number one, people are just excited about the opportunity versus like viewing it as a threat. I certainly very strongly I got excited. I will say I got lucky because within a week, I did some of that sort of, quick checking of ChatGPT, realized Sembit was not being mentioned. And I did a bunch of optimization very quickly. And within a week of starting that process, I went from being invisible to being much more visible. And we got our first lead. And so that was kind of the dopamine hit I needed to get into a virtuous cycle of being really interested in it, where I was like, okay, there's something here. And and so for me, it was like an opportunity. I was never very good at SEO. I was clearly bad at paid. I dropped 15 grand and got nothing out of it, and I'm not super interested in a LinkedIn strategy or whatever, I'm a technical person that runs a technical consulting firm. Right. But this is it's very rewarding. You can be ahead of people, like I think I know it feels like everyone's behind, but the truth is, in talking to a lot of brands, nobody knows how to do any of this in an effective manner. It's number one, it's evolving. Like, I don't know the final form it will take.
Right.
And so we're really just like, what's the cutting edge of doing this? And that, that is going to advance and change over time. But yeah, I mean, I think just approaching it as a series of experiments, being interested and open to it, viewing it as an opportunity, not a threat. I mean, we've seen people do some pretty amazing things in terms of becoming very, very visible, even at the national level when they were completely invisible before. I mean, it's just a new world, and I would say like attitude is probably what's going to dictate the winners and the losers here.
That's that is great. Gosh, Sean, thank you for spending this time with us, and thank you for sharing all this hard-earned insight and advice on what we can do with it, and places to be watching because it's changing all the time. It's going to continue to change. The change is probably going to accelerate. Um, Super valuable for us. So gang, if you well, okay, so if folks can't make it to Portland. Uh, to JJ's and to have a couple of shots of espresso with you. Um, how can they get in touch with you at Zero Channel? Uh, how do you engage with folks that might be interested in learning more and connecting with you guys at Zero Channel?
Yeah, I mean, I think the easiest path is just to shoot me an email, SHAUND at Sembit, SEMBIT.com, or hit me up on LinkedIn. And to be clear, this is very much research mode. We're investing quite a bit in research. We have 5 people working on this project, including one ML person. So, reach out. We don't necessarily have to work together on a project. If you have interesting insights, information. If you know something about geo, I don't. I love to learn. I love to have conversations. So just reach out and we'll have a conversation and chat. And I'd be happy to share, what I know with anybody who is curious. So yeah, just hit me up on LinkedIn or hit me up at my Sembit email, and I'll talk to anybody who is interested in talking about AI search optimization. It's kind of it's 2 things, right? Like it helps my company. A lot Quite a bit of our revenue is now coming from leads that came from, were confirmed to come from AI search optimization. So that's a big thing. Like it's helped my company. We're growing. Some of our competitors are going out of business, and we're actually growing, right? But the second thing is, it's just a passion project of mine. I would probably be doing this regardless. I just have loved digging into it. I've loved, we've spent as a group, we've spent, thousands of hours at this point reverse engineering this, and working on this and building out solutions and harnesses to do the analysis, etc., scraping network, etc. And so if you want to just talk to somebody who's passionate about it and learn about it, I can share many more details and tell you everything I know. So there you go.
That's great. I mean, community is communication, uh, particularly around these important topics for B2B marketing, how our world is changing, how we get it done, how we can all put heads together and figure it out is that's the whole mission behind what Leadtail is doing with the Tomorrow's Best Practices Today podcast. So thank you not only for bringing all this intellect, but that great attitude to our community and sharing with us today. Shaun Davidson of Sembit of Zero Channel. Thank you for your time today. Thanks for sharing, and thanks for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you, Clark.